Life's challenges are not meant to paralyze you. They're supposed to help you find out who you are. I'm Ben Ahrens, co-founder of Reorigin, where we teach you how to reclaim your health by retraining your brain. And in this video, we're going to dive into the topic of post-traumatic growth, what it is, how to foster it, and why it's going to help you with your healing and recovery journey. So let's get into it. I want to take a look at an article that was recently published in Harvard Business Review about 5 phases of post-traumatic growth. But first, what is PTG, or post-traumatic growth? Well, we all know that post-traumatic stress is something that can happen after a challenging event. Whether it's an illness, an injury, an accident, or any major life stressor, can leave us feeling senses of fear, even manifesting in physical trauma, in senses in the body, felt sensations of fear and trembling and anxiety and things like that. And we know from a neurological perspective that trauma can actually dysregulate the nervous system. And the nervous system controls the beating of the heart, our breath, and all of the functions of the organs and systems throughout the body. So it's no surprise that more and more research is coming out these days showing the far-reaching impacts of stress and trauma and challenging events on our physical health. Now, there's this interesting phenomenon, however, that was discovered in the mid-1990s by 2 clinical psychologists. Their names are Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun. And what they discovered was that some people, when faced with a challenge, actually seem to grow stronger because of it. They develop an improved outlook on life. And this doesn't happen overnight. It usually takes them time to process it and in some ways reappraise the situation as something that can actually help them grow. But in the end, they do grow and they move forward in a way where they can go even far beyond where they feel they might have been able to go prior to the event. This is actually something I experienced myself with going through chronic Lyme disease. You can check out my TED Talk and see my experience of being 3 years bedbound in my mid-20s. But it gave me something that I didn't have before. It gave me the ability to self-regulate. It gave me the ability to move forward in the face of discomfort, in the face of fear. I could talk a lot about the benefits of post-traumatic growth and my own experience, but you can see that in my talk and elsewhere on our site as well. In this video, I want to go over these 5 phases of post-traumatic growth. But first, let's get into a little bit more what it is. So I think one of the best explanations is, if anyone's read the book Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Taleb, he actually had to create this new word in our lexicon that didn't exist before, known as anti-fragility. So this new word is meant to account for a unique ability that humans have that basically nothing else seems to have in the universe. I'll give you an example that he gives in the book. If we drop a glass plate on the floor and it breaks, well, we just call that fragile. We all know what that is. If we have a plastic plate and you drop that on the ground and it doesn't break, well, we call that resilient. And that's good too. But now imagine that you had a plate where every time you dropped it, it actually became stronger as a result of the impact, right? This is a unique ability that only the human being has. Not only can we withstand challenging events in life, we can actually grow stronger, more resilient biologically, biochemically, physiologically, and psychologically as a result of facing these challenges. There was a famous study that was done in the mid-1990s where researchers observed 2 different groups that had life-changing experiences that took them in very different ways. The first group were lottery winners. These were people that went from living a normal life to all of a sudden winning the lottery. Their life was dramatically changed. And what they found was that after about a 6-month period, the excitement wore off, the enthusiasm wore off, and their life satisfaction seemed to revert to some previous norm. Whatever they felt before, if they were depressed before, they felt depressed again. If they were mediocre before, they, even after winning all that money, came back to feeling pretty mediocre again. The other group was people whose life had changed in the other direction, having experienced an ostensibly negative event. In this case, it was people who had become paraplegic. So they looked at people who were in car accidents and things like that and lost the ability to walk for the rest of their lives. And what they found is, as you'd expect, of course, there was an adjustment period, but after about 6 months, the interesting thing they found was that these people as well tended to revert to that mean of life satisfaction, meaning if they were happy before the accident, after about 6 months of adjusting, they were happy afterwards. But the really interesting part is that some of them actually went beyond that baseline and took their health and happiness, well-being, their outlook on life, even to the next level. And they actually attribute their new outlook on growth and life to the accident. They see themselves as being able to go far beyond or experience more happiness than they otherwise would have, even if that accident hadn't happened. This is the epitome of post-traumatic growth. So in Harvard Business Review, this article lays out 5 different phases of post-traumatic growth. Let's go through them one by one so we can learn how we can actually consciously implement this to change our brains, change our responses, and improve our outcomes and outlook on life. So the very first phase is awareness or education. This simply means understanding when you feel dysregulated, when you're experiencing a trauma or a challenge, what is actually happening in your body. We don't have to go too much into deep detail of the physiology, but when we understand that there are stress chemicals and hormones running through the system that are causing us to feel the way we do, it allows us to disidentify from the problem, to remove some of that shame and blame that we might otherwise put on ourselves, feeling stuck, feeling like, why can't I move forward? For instance, imagine that you feel your heart racing, right? You feel palpitations and almost like a panic response. If you didn't have any awareness of what was causing it, it might cause you to actually have a panic response. But now imagine that I just told you that unbeknownst to you, you've been slipped a cup of coffee with 100 milligrams of caffeine, and that I explained to you that caffeine has this effect where it races the heart, increases adrenaline and cortisol in the system, and most of all, that it will work its way through your system in accordance with a certain half-life. Now, you might still experience those heart palpitations or increased heart rate, but it probably won't have this secondary effect where you feel anxious about being anxious, because now you know there's a reason. There's a biological and a biochemical cause, and like all biochemistry, things settle down over time if we allow them to flow. In fact, it's only our resistance when we don't know what's causing something or we're not aware that we tend to want to get out of this feeling. We start resisting it, that we actually perpetuate it, and we extend the half-life of those neurohormones and chemicals that are causing the discomfort in the first place. So again, that first phase of post-traumatic growth is simply awareness of whatever it is you're feeling is okay, it's a normal response, and it will diminish in time if we allow ourselves to settle and let it flow. The second phase is emotional regulation. This is where we realize that we actually have a fair bit of control over our nervous systems and our bodily and brain state. So a simple example of this is like putting on music or going for a walk or looking out a window or changing your perspective. Studies have even been done that looking out over a horizon line drops you into this lantern vision and a parasympathetic state. So there's a lot that we can do insofar as changing our movement patterns, our expressions. Amy Cuddy gave this great talk, TED Talk on power posing. So we change our state, our physiology. Tony Robbins talks a lot about changing physiology. These are all things that we can do to change how our emotions are processed and basically change how we feel in the moment. So that's the second phase, is starting to sort of take ownership of where our emotions and thoughts are dwelling. The third phase is disclosure. This is where we acknowledge what has happened. We don't make it worse than it is. We don't make it better than it is. We simply acknowledge that what is, right? This is what's happening, and in this moment, maybe this is how I feel, or my heart is racing. So again, acknowledging this leads us to the next step, which is acceptance. Now, I struggled with acceptance when it came to my own healing and recovery journey, because I think like others, I felt that if I'm accepting, if I'm surrendering, does that mean I'm just giving up? And in fact, what I learned is that acceptance is not giving up. Acceptance is actually what's required in order for us to take that next step, which is moving forward. So we first have to acknowledge where we are if we want to be able to take steps into where we're going. And in the Reorigin program, this is something that we do with all of the people who come into our program, is we lay out a science-backed way for how they can unpack their neurophysiological loops that explain why they are feeling the way they are, why their body might be functioning the way it is. And we have them lay it out in a way that they can clearly understand, okay, here's where I am. I don't need to judge it or condemn it or resist it. I can just acknowledge this is where things are right now. It's not where they'll be in the future, it's just for now. When we take this step of acceptance, then we can start to see the challenge for what it is, which is a passing discomfort in an otherwise long, happy, and healthy life. I know what it's like to feel stuck, and when we're in that place, it feels like you will never get out the other side. But in reality, nothing is actually stuck. Even on a biological level, our cells are constantly turning over at various rates. Every cell in the human body and the human being is replacing itself. Everything is moving. There's a great quote from The Never-Ending Story that says, "Nothing is static. Everything is in transition. Nothing is ever lost. Everything is transformed." So whenever we're feeling stuck, take that breath, accept where we are, and come back to this phase of acknowledging that whatever we're experiencing is a momentary discomfort in an otherwise long, happy, and healthy life. The next phase, and what this paves the way to, is narrative development. This is where we get to choose how we see that stressful event or that challenge we had. Viktor Frankl famously said that between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our ability to choose our new response or insert our story. This is where we can look back and we can see obstacles as opportunities. We can see them as what I call neuroplasticity gold, right? Every challenge is really an opportunity for us to practice brain retraining, to practice conditioning a new response that's going to help us to feel how we want to feel in a way that's more advantageous to overall health and happiness and even healing. I once heard an extreme sports athlete, a skier, say about her training and all the things she does, "I don't do it despite the fear, I do it because of the fear." She does it to exercise her courage. We know that fear, the idea is not to make fear go away, it's actually to move forward in the face of challenges, to move forward in the face of fear. That is the very definition of courage. And the last phase of this post-traumatic growth journey is service. We know from studying blue zones, these are areas around the world that have the highest rates of centenarians, or people that live to be over 100, that the one thing they had in common was not their diet, it was not their food that they breathed or the location where they lived, it was their community, their bonds to each other, and their sense of service, their sense of ability to pay things back to the community. It makes sense that when we've gone through a challenging situation or a challenging life event, that our attention turns inward. This is a necessary phase of the healing journey. But there also comes a point where in order to fully heal, I believe that we have to turn our attention outward as well and start helping others in the community, pay it forward in a sense. If you think of a human being as part of a bigger collective, we need to be infused and involved in this bigger organism. Imagine if I took some skin cells, I scraped my arm, and I put some skin cells on the table, to give a sort of strange example. Within just a few seconds, those skin cells would actually start to die because they're no longer part of the bigger organism. But if I could instantly put them back and reintroduce them to the bigger organism, that's to say my body, they would instantly be infused with all of the life-invigorating energy that they need in order to thrive. Similarly, as human beings, if we isolate ourselves from the broader community, our friends, our family, or people around us in our peer group, it's easy to go deeper down that rabbit hole. It's easy to become depressed. But when we find that we've reached this point where we can start plugging in, helping others, thinking about sharing our experience in ways that can benefit others, then this is the very definition of growth in the end. I want to end this video with one of my favorite quotes by Winston Churchill that I think really sums up the phases of post-traumatic growth. He said, "Success is never final. Failure is never fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." If I could share with you one thing today, it would be no matter what it is you're going through, you're not stuck. Many others, myself included, have gone through challenges, and there's many others like you out there who have probably experienced challenges similar to you. This is not to downplay whatever it is that you're experiencing, but just to say that I truly believe that we all have this ability to exercise our anti-fragile nature, to keep taking steps forward, and to make this life a beautiful experience. Again, I'm Ben Ahrens, co-founder of Reorigin, a science-based neuroplasticity program that teaches you how to reclaim your health by retraining your brain. If you found this video interesting, please leave some comments in the section below, give a thumbs up, and check out re-origin.com if you want to take a deeper dive into doing some of this work yourself.